Welcome to this week Techniques Tuesday. I'm going to demonstrate today the Fringe Looping Foot. We get lots of questions about this foot, but what would I use it and how do I use it? It's a very intriguing looking foot. Makes really nice 3D loops like the picture on the left side with the baby lock foot. And then also on the right side, I have the closer image of that foot from the brother website. They really are the same feet on either company, so both of those will work with any of the brother and baby lock machines. In addition, for the Fringe Looping Foot, on some of the techniques, I will show a couple other feet. We need to secure some of those loops, so one of the ones will be helpful to use is an open toe foot, whether it is the plastic or the metal version of it. And then to do the fagotting or the bridging, I will be using also the baby lock bridging plate set. So there'll be a couple extra accessories that make some of the techniques easier. So let's get started.
And I'm going to demonstrate one of the really cool feet. This is called the Fringe Looping Foot. And I've done this little bookmark some time ago where I put the little loops around the heart applique. Then I used the same foot for fagotting, and I even made a fringe with it. So I'm going to set up in the machine and show how this cool foot works. And there's the foot. It has that big bar on the middle, and that is where the zigzag stitch needs to go over. So very important, don't have your needle set on a straight stitch needle at the center, because that will break your needle. So we just need to make sure we use a zigzag, that it is wide enough to go over that bar. And then mine is a very old one. This one has a screw. All the current one, I believe, they now just come a little fixed setting, fixed screw. Mine, it is most likely 12 years old. A great reference guide about the baby lock feet, which of course can be used with all the brother machine too. But this one, mine is an older one, baby lock sewing machine accessory workbook. I believe they call them now inspirational guides. There's a similar one for the searcher feet too. But this one has information and techniques about all these specialty feet that are available. And one of the ones, there is information about the Fringe Looping Foot. And here's the page that shows how to use the fringe foot to create the fringe. I will show also the looping part of it, and then if I have time, I may even show the fagotting too, because they really are similar techniques. But this one, as it shows on the settings, they tell to put the stitch length to 0.7. For me, that is just way too long stitch length, especially if I use embroidery threads. And then the width, they has 3 to 3.5. I often change the width a little bit wider. I get a little bit longer loops that way. But again, you can just alter that one a little bit. I just showed a little test sample on the different settings on my machine. And I started with the 3.5 millimeter stitch width. And then I went to actually 2 samples on 3.5, and then I changed the width to 5.0, and finally the wide is 7.0. So depending on a little bit what technique what I use, I may use a different setting. And then for the stitch length, all the others except the second sample, I had used a 0.3. So 0.2 on this one with the same stitch width as the first sample. That one just shows that it is a little bit denser. If you go very short stitch length and then you have a really thick thread on the top, it will jam in there on that foot. So kind of watch that one. But then a very important thing that all of these ones, you need to make sure your top tension is very low, and it is 0.4. This was a little upholstery sample I used, and I had contrasting color thread in a bobbin. So you kind of see how the tension shows. That way I don't see any of that bobbin thread on the top side. How to use this foot. So I have snapped it in place. So this is a snap-on foot, goes onto the normal ankle. And then I just have a little piece of fabric with some stabilizer underneath. And I have really wild colors on my thread, so it'll hopefully show well in the camera. So on this one, all I want to do is just to make sure that I have a zigzag that is wide enough to go over that bar. So I have currently set my machine for 3.5 wide millimeters as stitch width and 0.2 millimeter stitch length, and my tension is at 0.4. So we need to have that very low tension. And I have a contrasting color bobbin thread, so that way it will be helpful if you do a fringe. So here's just something that I have done the fringe, and then I did some looping on this one. So how this foot works, whether I go straight lines or little curves like I did around this heart, I want to normally tie on my stitches in the beginning. So I'm gonna use the little tie-on function on my machine. So mine has that little circular pattern, which will then just to tack it in place. If you have a machine that doesn't have a separate patterns for the tie-on and the reverse function, in that case, select the zigzag stitch that will be doing the stitch in place tie-on. Because we don't want to go back and forth with this foot, because it will kind of get jammed on this over this little bar. And then other one, I had my last time what I was doing, I had my pivoting function on. You do not really want to have a pivoting function with this foot. So I'm going to turn it off, because otherwise if I have the pivoting function on and minute I stop stitching, my foot lifts up, but so does the fabric with it. So this is the time that I don't like to use the pivoting function. So then all I had to do is just a stitch, and it will just go over that bar. So whether I do straight stitches, go a bit faster, or I can do even some slight curves. And at the end again, I'm going to tie the stitches and then cut the threads. So see, they're kind of stuck on the foot, so how to take it off, we'll pull it backward, so that way we'll take it out. So here's my little loopy thing. Well, this is very weak at the moment, so we need to somehow secure, because if I had this on a clothing or home decor or quilt, anyway, I want to get a little bit three-dimensional, and if I catch on these threads, it will pull loose. So how I secure it? Well, what we could do is, on this case, I had sewn just tiny triple straight stitches over that edge. You could also do a little blanket stitch, as I had done on this heart. I just went little blanket stitches. And also in this case, I had first drawn the heart shape onto my fabric, did the fringe stitching around it, and then I put my applique on top. So that already somewhat secured those stitches. Another option and that is that I could put the layer of a fusible interfacing on top of it, just kind of lightweight interfacing to secure those stitches. And then of course we could use the fray block, the seam sealant for that one too, kind of a little bead underneath to secure them. I have contrasting color thread on my bobbin, so you kind of see how the stitches look like. So if I wanted to secure this one, this time I will not be able to use this foot. I like using an open toe foot. You could use the end foot, but the open toe really works best, because I can control those loops that way. And I'm gonna just select this time that tiny little blanket stitch that I had. I have it set for 2 millimeters width and length. And the blanket stitch, if I put even my little projection on, so the blanket stitch, I want to have the straight part to go over that edge of these loops. And other thing I like to do is I want to shift this stitch towards left. So if you have a capability to the left-right shift on your machine, so all the bigger machines we have this left-right shift feature. So I will move it as far to the left as I can. So what that means in that now my, I'm gonna get a little tool in here. That way my my foot sort of sits on top of it. Lower the pressure foot down so I can adjust it. I normally would use my knee level on this one, but I have the camera on the way, so I had to use some of the manual tools on this time. So I'm gonna use a purple tongue stylus, so all will work great. I'm gonna get these loops out of the way, and then I can do my stitching so that I'll just catch that edge of those satin stitches. And that's the reason I also shifted the stitch as far to the left as possible, so that I can really fold those stitches out of the way. Otherwise they will be in front of the toe. So this just takes a little while to go, but we want to have those ones all lined up. and secured. So let me turn the pivoting function on this time, because now the pivoting function is helpful when I go around the curve. There we go. So that is just one way that I can secure. Of course, you could use any kind of decorative stitch. And actually on this one, I had used a fairly dense decorative stitch to anchor these ones in place. So we can have multiple options for that one. But just we need to somehow secure that other end. It's just they are not very secure otherwise. I'm not going to show all of it. Let me just do a little bit. So that way now we have them secured from that side. And I could leave them as loops, or then if I cut the edges, they will become as a fringe. I could either cut them on the top side, or then if I cut from this side, and if I have contrasting color bobbin thread, if I actually cut the bobbin thread instead, these little snips will work great. Some of the sharp tips. Trim that one. There we go. I think I got all the bobbin threads there. And then I can kind of carefully just to, without pulling them, and I get some of those bobbin threads on top side. So I can leave these ones as loops. And I have to carefully pull them out. I could leave them as loops, or I can keep, it look like I cut some of the ones, or I could give a little haircut for them, and then I will have them as a fringe. So that is, I can leave them as a surface on like this one, or I can pull them up on the top side and then give a fringe on the middle. Well, how did I get the fringe in the edge? Like on this case, I put the fringe in the edge. So I'm gonna go and pick up that my zigzag stitch again. But this time I'm gonna make my stitch width as wide as possible. And then for the stitch length, I'm gonna put it 0.2 for my thread. I'm using machine embroidery thread, and it will just give a little bit heavier look for that one. So what I need to have is a secure edge. Well, this fabric doesn't really ravel very much, but I may want to have a fold on the edge. That's what I did on this one. I folded the edge. And then I need to have a little piece of scrap fabric, which was just a little strip that I folded the edge under. This doesn't matter what it is, it's going to be thrown away. And then I will put back my Fringe Looping Foot. And then do the fold. And little tip, if I put the fabric, my main fabric on the right side, and this my extra fabric on the left side, it will make it easier to pull that bobbin thread. So now what I need to do is I need to keep these two edges a little bit separated, that I don't sew them together. Well, it's a zigzag stitch, so it wants to pull it together. Well, we have some options if you want to make the job easier. Baby Lock make these cool bridging plate sets. And these ones, there's one that is used for most of the current machines. Solaris and Luminaire, we would need to use the one that has a little bit different shape. Because what that one does is, it will put a little guide that will keep my two edges separated, so I don't need to fight with those ones. So I'm gonna use that. So I'll take my normal bobbin cover out, and this is important, you also have contrasting color bobbin thread. And then I will put this bobbin cover on. So this time now when I put my piece of fabric, the scrap fabric on the left side and my actual fabric on the right side. And then let me lower the pressure foot. So this time I really don't even need to tie on it, but sometimes if you have really slippery threads, it might be helpful to do a little tie on stitches on that edge too. And I needed to turn my pivoting function off. So now all I have to do is just to stitch between two pieces. One tip also, that if you have a little bit heavier thread and then a very short stitch length, you may have a little pile up on this part that doesn't get underneath, because we put the needle up in there, because the gap is not big enough between the ankle piece and the bar guide in the foot. if you have a foot like that one, one thing you may want to try to lengthen your stitch length maybe 1 notch. I'm using 0.2 and stitch length, and I'm using embroidery thread on the top. But then also we had one point, some set of the feet years ago at least, that this bar was a little bit too close to the ankle where that attaches to the machine. Alan adjusted those ones. But if you have a problem that it comes punching up, you may want to bring the foot in the shop and tell Alan about it. He knows what to do with it because he adjusted for you on that time when we did on some of the foot of the month classes. So let me go ahead and stitch this seam. Okay, I think I've done enough. At this time, I'm just going to cut them. I'm not going to tie them. So this looks kind of a bit of a funny looking loops at the moment. So I'm going to pull them a little bit so I can see the popping thread. So that way, what I want to make sure that my top thread is showing a little bit in this one, because I need to anchor it on this side. So I'm going to this time to go and pick up the triple straight stitch. And then I put back onto my ordinary popping cover and then change the foot to the open toe foot again. Oops, they didn't get it all lined up. There we go. So this time I want to anchor these stitches a little bit. This stitch, as it comes out already, it is on the left needle position, which works really good for me in this case. So let me just gonna pull it out a bit, lower the pressure foot. Kind of awkward because I can't use my needle lifter because I have my camera on that place. So now I'm just gonna tuck this a little bit so that they open, and then I will do a triple straight stitch on that edge. I could have even shortened the stitch length a little bit. I have currently at a 2.5, but I would most likely want to put it like 1.5, very short stitch length, but this is just a little sample. So important thing was that I somehow anchored. Like I said, I could use a decorative stitch to anchor them too, like I did on this one. So now, this popping thread is gonna come out. And I'm gonna use my little pointy scissors for that one, because I did secure it when I started to stitch. I'm gonna first just to cut that popping thread a little bit so that I will get it released. That is the reason that you may not actually want to secure. It's just that I had both the top and popping embroidery threads. They're very slippery. So I'm gonna get the popping thread and pull it out. That's why you want it to have a contrasting color popping thread. And it just comes out, and then very gently I will just release those ones, and then I'm going to pinch between my fingers, pull out this extra fabric that was just my helper, and here we have it. Beautiful fringe just done in the edge of the fabric. And then I would just cut those red tails. And I most likely, if this was a garment or something, I would maybe even put a little bit of a seam sealant on that one to be secure. And then how to do fagotting. Well, I'm gonna go and again put my stitch width on the zigzag stitch all the way to 7 millimeters, but I have the stitch length at this time at 0.3 and the tension at 0.4. So now I put this wider fagotting the bridging plate set. Earlier I had used this narrower one, but it comes on 2 sizes, so I put the wider one this time. And now I have 2 good edges. What I mean, like on this little bookmark, I had joined 2 pieces together. So let me get this one and line them up between them. Again, I want to tack it down. Because again, I want to have my zigzags to go over both of these edges, but I want to have a gap between. If I don't have this bridging plate set, they want to pull together. It doesn't work very well this way without it. So I really like to use that little bridging plate. I have tried to hold it back before this came out, and I even glued little pieces onto my stitch plate, which was they always came off. So I was so excited when we got these bridging plate sets for the machine, because it makes it so much easier. Go a bit faster. So all I have to do is just to guide my fabric between those two plates. I look like I got that little thread tail in there too. And I will just stitch this one, and then we tie the stitches at the ends. Pull it back. So now what I have there is a pretty. Now this time you really should use the same color bobbin thread because you might see a little bit, but for this demo I just left the one what I had. Then I'm gonna go back to the open toe foot and ordinary stitch on the bobbin cover also. And now I'm gonna go pick up the triple straight stitch, move the nil position to the center. So I'm gonna pull these between my kind of hands apart, and then that's the reason I want to have that bigger gap this time, because now all I'm gonna stitch is the triple straight stitch between these two layers. And then I could tie the ones, but this is just a scrap, so I'm gonna show this way. So now I have made a little fagotting, or I don't know, pritsin, whatever it is called, but I joined two fabric edges, and they need to be folded edges. So that is like on this bookmark. I showed first the bookmark pieces together, and then I had the two folded edges that I was able to do the little fagotting in the middle, and then the fringe in the edge, and then a little looping on the top. That was one of our Foot of the Month clubs that we had done a couple times in the past.